It's difficult to imagine a recent past without mobile phones, without the internet, when you had to buy a CD to hear your favorite music. But our brave new world of technology is radically altering the way we shop, do business, and live our lives. So are Silicon Valley entrepreneurs delivering a utopian future? And is that future designed with your best interests in mind? It's our subject tonight, the tech boom. From San Francisco, California, this is The Business of Life. Welcome to The Business of Life, coming to you this week from San Francisco, California. It became apparent to me that new technologies had radically altered our world when so many company names had become verbs. Every banal moment is Facebooked and Instagrammed, money is Venmoed, travel is Ubered. These are technologies many of us use, and many of us think we couldn't live without. So is Silicon Valley democratizing our world and saving us money? Or is the new tech boom, as one of our panelists recently wondered, not reaching the masses, but allowing, quote, people on the lowest rungs of the 1% to live like they're betters in the 0.1%? Well, today we're going to find out. And as always, we'll break down the issue using facts, figures, dollars, and cents. And I'm joined by a panel of experts clamoring to answer the question, can Silicon Valley save humanity? Let's meet them. Farhad Manjoo is the state-of-the-art columnist for the New York Times. He was formerly a writer for Slate, Wired, The Wall Street Journal, and he's a contributor to National Public Radio. Gutman is the founder and CEO of HealthTap, an Uber-like app for the healthcare industry that connects patients with doctors and virtual consultants. And Alice Truong is the senior Silicon Valley correspondent for Quartz. She's also logged time as Fast Company's West Coast correspondent and as a tech columnist for USA Today. Thank you for being here. Welcome, all of you. And let's begin with our first topic, starting up. But before we do, can I ask the audience something? I assume, because we're in San Francisco, that everybody here works in the tech industry. Can you just give me a sign and hand if you work in the tech industry? What percentage is that? Probably 50? Maybe more. I think that's 60%. Oh, dear. Let's bring up our first number. Entrepreneurs are twice as likely to report having stolen something by force as kids. Steve Wozniak, who is an early Apple guy, this is a quote from him that was in that report, I think misbehavior is strongly correlated with and responsible for creative thought. And this study also noted that 40% of entrepreneurs are more likely to have been stopped by the police.
I would imagine that these are the kinds of business people that have more in common with artists than with, sort of like the kinds of people, like accountants, for example. Like you imagine these people sort of breaking the rules and, hopefully ethically, but sometimes, not completely legally, like the question we have regarding Uber. Uber may in various places break laws, but it's like breaking a convention and doing something that hadn't been done before.
Let's look at this next number. $30,000. That's the average cost of founding a startup. And note here that 82% of startup funding comes from personal savings, friends, and family. Okay. That leads us to, I think, sort of an elephant in the room here in San Francisco. This is kind of a digital divide thing. You have to be pretty privileged to be able to start a startup, right? I mean, you can't just have a great idea, come from the wrong side of the tracks and just walk into it. I mean, it seems like everybody's getting this money from their families.
There's a certain funnel. Silicon Valley has a certain reputation. It's white, it's male, it's young. And I guess also they tend to have a streak of rebellion.
And it is at that it's rich, white kids.
I mean, it's changing, right? So at first, people didn't have access to this technology, and mobile phones have really changed that, right? Like, the people who didn't have access to the internet 10 years ago now do in developing countries in the United States. Now, the question is, are they going to be able to kind of get into this business? You could look at this problem, in many layers. Like, the people at the tech companies will blame, the U.S. educational system, and they'll blame,
I mean, they sort of have a point, don't
right.
they?
But, you could also say it's the way they hire.
Well, We can ask Ron how he hires.
Yeah, I think it is the way you hire. I think you can solidify an existing situation the way it is today, or you can be proactive about it and say, no, I actually want to have a diverse workforce. For example, on the engineering side, we became very proactive about hiring women engineers. And it's not very easy to find, because if you look at in the schools, right, in the distribution of like male to female, you see more male. But if you look for them and you encourage them, then you find them. And then it becomes a thing in the company, and all of a sudden, people are looking for that, and people start looking for you.
I think everybody, or 60% of the people, raised their hands when I asked if you worked at a tech company. Is this a problem you see, anyone, in your own company? You work in tech.
I'm a software engineer.
So when I asked if there's, a dearth of women or minorities, you were vigorously shaking your head.
I think we have a lot of cultures. Women, we have a very, very small percentage.
So there's a great advantage if you're a female engineer right now,
I
right?
have very good job security.
You do?
We're hiring. Just saying, I mean.
We make so many connections here. Let's look at this next number here. In 2014, companies in the Bay Area received half of U.S. venture capital investments. And between 2007 and 2012, San Francisco was home to America's fastest widening income gap.
I just have to say, I think this is more San Francisco's fault than the tech industry's fault.
Really?
This is a city that has consistently refused to build housing for decades. Seattle has a booming tech economy, and it doesn't have these problems because they built housing. This is a problem that most other cities in this country and in the world would love to have. You have this booming industry that may change the whole world, that may become sort of like what finance is to New York. You could tax these companies correctly and have a better transportation system, have better housing. And if San Francisco sort of reckoned with that possible future and built housing and did a lot of other things that accommodated the industry and fought the excesses, it would work.
Just so I'm clear, you're saying that despite the fact that Google is a how many billion-dollar company it is now, that's the wrong target. And because, it's not their fault.
If they went away,
Right,
you'd have more problems.
Yeah.
If, people wouldn't have jobs here. People are working here. The economy did not decline to the extent that most other cities did during the recession because of these companies.
Alice, you seem a bit skeptical. Am I right about that?
I mean, Farhad makes a lot of really good points. It's true.
But
San Francisco is incredibly expensive. The median housing price just went past $1 million. The reason this is the case is because the salaries are so inflated. And San Francisco, this audience aside, a very small portion of the people who live here actually work in tech, right? And so they can't keep up with how expensive the city is.
Does anyone here have that sort of boiling, roiling hatred inside them at tech companies, right? You do.
Me and my girlfriend, we live in a room inside of a house, and we're paying $950 a month.
A room inside of a house?
A room, yes, with 5 other bedrooms. And I feel that the Bay Area, I guess they just assume that everybody else has tech salaries, and we just getting by month, just regular jobs.
You think that if that tech industries had migrated to another city, rents would come down, your life would be a lot easier. Is there anything to this?
I mean, it's possible, but a lot of people in the city would be worse off if that happened, and many local businesses would suffer. It seems like it's unusual for a city to want sort of economic decline.
Okay, let's move on to this next then. Over the summer of 2015, 2/3 of Harvard's MBA freshman class interned at a startup. One more thing I have to say, I looked up the internships. I didn't know this. They're paid, and they're on average around $8,000 a month for an internship. Well, I thought they were free.
They probably have to work a lot for that $8,000. I imagine they're working all the time. I think in general, it seems like a very stressful, hyper-competitive environment that...
I mean, and they're getting paid accordingly, right?
Yes, they are. That's what I'm saying. It's not like one of those internships where you're just getting coffee.
Being competitive is very, very important, right? The environment is an environment that actually promotes excellence, and hard work, but also mission-driven people, right? We're looking for people that have the right fit. We're looking for people that actually are excited about what they're doing. They have the skills, but they also have the passion.
I know it seems like a basic question, but looking into this is incredibly complicated. How do I get a job in tech if I have the skills and if 600 people are applying for one job?
Referrals.
Referrals.
So you have to know the right people, again.
All right. So this is how we create these classes that never move, right?
One thing that's emerging, which is funneling people who are outside of these computer science majors, are these coding boot camps that have been popping up all over the country, and more or less teach you the basics, like the skills you need to in like 8 weeks. And so you can.
But you're not going to get a job at.
Would you hire somebody from one of those places?
We would
Do you have to
hire
have a 4-year
someone
degree?
who's very creative, right? So I can tell you stories from now until tomorrow about people that eventually got hired because they were walking on University Avenue and they waited there to meet someone that is working in the company, start having a conversation, came inside, and just went through not just the normal channels.
So if you don't know somebody, stalk them.
Yeah, definitely.
Great
just be
idea.
creative, be entrepreneurial.
Hang out in front of people's houses. Until they hire you.
Be different, right? Be entrepreneurial.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things you can do, one of the things that has been proved successful is like building your own app, and then they'll buy your app, and then you'll make a lot more than if you got that internship.
Yeah. Doing something that we're looking for, that happened too. Like someone came to us creating their own project, right? Saying, hey, what if you added this feature to what you're doing? And by the way, I built it, and maybe you want to take a look at it.
All right, let's bring up this next number here. 11%, that's the share of private sector jobs created by venture-backed companies.
I mean, you probably have good researchers, but I don't believe that number.
Sometimes.
I mean, 11%, that sounds totally high, especially when you consider that a lot of the new tech companies hire very few people. Like, WhatsApp, when it was purchased by Facebook for $19 billion, I think they had 50 employees.
Instagram is much the same, right?
Yeah.
They had a very, very small staff.
That's the power of software, right? You can create huge, huge companies that have huge impact with dozens of people.
We're going to pause now for a brief break, but we'll be back in a moment to discuss the truth behind the share economy here on The Business of Life. Let's get slightly more specific, and let's move on to our second topic, the share economy. Let's bring up our first stat. 43% of Americans say that ownership feels like a burden, and 4 in 5 believe it's cheaper to share goods than to own them. This is a bit of a sea change, isn't it? These kind of results here. 86% of people in the survey said that the sharing economy makes life more affordable.
Just to take San Francisco, for example, it is pretty expensive to own a car in San Francisco. You have to pay for parking. Parking is expensive. You'll get tickets, and it's totally inconvenient too. Like, I would say that Uber has changed the way people get around San Francisco in a huge way. And for a lot of people, it's cheaper than owning a car.
Has anyone changed their habits, away from owning towards sharing, whether that's cars or whatnot? Yeah, go ahead.
So I recently moved, and I used like 3 apps to move and monetize my closet, which was awesome.
Monetize my closet.
Yes.
What is that?
So it means like make money off of the stuff you own. So going into this,
I got that much, but you sell old things or something?
one of the services I used was Style Lend. So it lets you borrow and lend clothes, so specifically like nice dresses. So I had all these dresses and I wasn't wearing them, so I'm like, okay, I can lend them and make money. Another one is Boxbee. So I was moving and I needed to store some stuff, and since I was moving to a smaller room, I used Boxbee, and it like stores all of your clothes.
But all of this stuff sort of existed before. It was just kind of a pain, right?
You could say it's a difference in degree, but it's actually a kind of a big thing to be able to find someone to buy your stuff and like actually sell it. You get money for it. That's like a huge thing.
All right, let's build on that and bring up this next number. In June 2015, 2,800 French cab drivers took to the streets to protest Uber. As a result, 70 cars were damaged or destroyed in the protest. Airbnb, I'd go down to the subway, and every day there was a poster that said, "Tell the government of New York what you think about Airbnb." I was like, really, do I have to? The argument isn't that crazy. It's sort of compelling in a way, isn't it? They don't pay tax. The hotels do pay tax. So, I mean, these upstart apps, which are really impressive in so many ways, I mean, should they be allowed to just kind of do an end run around this regulation that's been established for these old guys?
No, I think that there needs to be a new set of regulations that will be established for these kind of business models, because they are adding a lot of value to society, right, on the one hand. But we need to create, the kind of regulations that will make sure that, all these things are being in mind when we're providing them the ability to do business. But also, I think that the companies that are doing it can self-regulate by doing a lot more of the star reviews, right? Or the competition among the providers to make sure that some of the things that they're doing at a very high quality, as policed by the consumer or by the user of these services, but also by other professionals, right? So one thing that we're doing is, for example, is peer review, where doctors are reviewing each other's answers for quality or each other's consults for quality. And making sure that you are internally very honed to these particular things that these regulators are interested to protect, and you are very proactive about it as a company to make sure that the quality is very high, the safety is very high, all these things that the regulator will care about, you're proactively taking care of them in advance, can help that a lot.
Is there anyone that would be happy if the government or if a court said, you know, we have to rein in Uber? One person. Wow.
I would advocate for that. I want the drivers to be recognized as employees, and I want them to be subject to labor laws. If they are jobs where they are making money and providing for themselves, I want them to have the ability to have benefits, to take breaks.
I don't want to do PR for Uber, but I'm just going to give you their counter argument to this. These guys say that, look, most of our drivers, I think they have a huge percentage of drivers that they claim, and we're just trusting them on this, that work less than 12 hours a week. That most of them are just, you know, they have the app in the car, they turn it on, they turn it off. And they're not full-time employees, and that gives them this great sort of advantage. It puts extra money in their pocket. What do you think of that?
That goes back to, I think, one of the topics of the conversation today, and I don't trust that Uber has my best interest in mind.
All right, anybody disagree with that?
The thing that I would say is, like, personally, like, I kind of agree with this point over there, but at the same time, but where does that stop? These people who sign up for Uber, they sign an agreement saying, this is what I'm agreeing to. They walk into a deal knowing what to expect and what they're going to receive for as compensation, time off, and all that other stuff. But taking the argument of saying that, okay, I walked into an agreement saying that I'm a contractor, and then now all of a sudden, because of, you know, someone says that, oh, we should be hired as employees and receive benefits, time off, and, you know, so on and so forth, where does that argument stop it?
Is this new economy hurting workers?
It's really tough to say. I mean, they're both sides of this. Subsequently, as a result of, you know, more contractors demanding being recognized as full-time employees, some companies have gone out of business. There was HomeJoy, which was a service for finding maids.
HomeJoy?
Yeah, housekeepers, actually.
Okay.
I think maids is not the right term.
We've changed that,
That
too.
completely, like, shuttered because of these changes.
Okay, so, I mean, Uber is sort of emblematic of this whole new economy, so let's look at another stat that involves Uber. Between April and June of 2015, Uber accounted for 55% of all business travel ground transportation. Traditional taxis accounted for 43%. By and large, technology, and let's look globally here for a second, technology making the world a better place, right? I mean, if you're in India or if you're in China, cell phones in Africa where...
Yeah, I mean, if you're in India or in China, like, I think that you can say there's no argument it's making the world a better place. Like, if you're here in America and you're in the middle class, I don't know. You will get a lot of services that are cheaper. You may also lose your job.
Yeah.
I would say that, you know, if you're working with computers, you're going to do fine. If you're working like in a job that is kind of battling computers in some way against computers, you may have trouble.
But I want to add one more thing. It's not just economics. It's not just about making it cheaper, making it more accessible because it's easier to get from one place to the other. But sometimes it can save your life. Because if a doctor can be there because he happens to be available in a different geography, right? And you can push a button, get in front of them in like 5 seconds, it can save your life. More than 21,000 people send us a note thanking us for saving their lives. That's a lot.
There's also the flip side of it, right? In places like India, for instance, where Facebook has like internet.org and they're providing you with internet, it seems like a very walled garden experience where you get to use Facebook and all of the partners that have decided to like teamed up, but that's the only access you get to the internet, and that's what you experience.
Is this true?
Yeah, it's completely true.
Do you guys agree with that? With that idea that, you know, well, I mean, they are providing a service and services aren't free.
It looks like corporate social responsibility, but actually you're providing like a gilded cage. And if this is many people's first experience with the internet, I think it's a very sheltered experience, and you're controlling what people are actually finding. And it's not so much the freedom of information that the internet was heralded as.
So in your mind, it would be better if somebody had no internet?
No, I think that's a false dichotomy. You should kind of be overt with what's happening. There's definitely an exchange happening for getting access to the internet. It's not just, you know, a completely benign experience. And I'm not sure that they know this.
You know, we're talking a lot about the effect that this has on consumers, and let's look at what effect it has on old technologies. In 2014, Airbnb averaged 425,000 guests per night. The Hilton worldwide averages approximately 350,000 guests per night. Who here actually rents their house out on Airbnb? We'll start with that.
I partly use it to pay for my rent, which is kind of ironic. My rent is high, like probably most of you, but I predominantly use Airbnb to get out of the city. Rent it for a weekend, go camping. That's what I like to do.
Do you mind me asking how much you rent the apartment for?
I have a 1-bedroom, I pay $2,800.
And what do you rent it for per night?
For a weekend, I get about $600.
A lot of people in New York and in cities where the rent is extraordinarily high are using these services actually to stay in the city. Is it wrong or is it misguided for the sort of, say, the de Blasio administration to go after something like Airbnb?
I think it's reasonable for a city to not want every housing unit to become a hotel. That seems like within the city's purview. Like, hotel regulations don't exist to protect an industry. They exist because, like, you know, neighbors worry about it. Like, you don't want hourly rentals. You don't want bad things happening. And so, so in that way,
there's a slow simmer on the hourly rental.
no, I mean for like office work.
You might not want it, but don't force your morality on us. I mean, by the way, an hour's a little too long, but continue.
There's the other side of this to look at, which are, you know, there's a number of people who are kind of like professional landlords on Airbnb, and as a result, these, you know, I think San Francisco came out with a report earlier this year that something between like 1,000 and 2,000 units are not available on the market because of this, right? So it's exacerbating.
So it's having an effect on the market for just people coming in to look for new apartments.
Yeah, it's exacerbating like the housing crisis.
Should we feel bad about some of these technologies or sort of older industries that are being wiped away? I mean, I know the sort of creative destruction, the invisible hand, the market is creating new opportunities for people, but you know, is it all wine and roses? I suspect you're going to say yes.
No, but are they really being wiped away? That's my question, right? And in these cases, you know, like digitizing some of the availability or the excess capacity in certain areas doesn't necessarily imply that we're removing other industries out of the way. For example, we're creating new capacity, we're creating new use cases. If you look at it in medicine, the opportunity to provide areas of medicine or use cases that didn't exist before, because you can connect people and doctors via video, you know, opens for us opportunities that just didn't exist before to create more capacity for doctors to do things or to spend less time on things that are mundane and they're very simple and can be solved very easily remotely, and free up more of their time to take care of cases that are more severe and more serious, right? So it's not necessarily taking away jobs from them, but it's focusing the doctors on things that they actually require more sophisticated and more time in order to solve.
Question or a comment for the panel?
Hi, so my question is, what are some significant risks that are common to startups?
Risks in startups. You have a startup, you employ many people. Give us an idea.
At the essence, you know, tackling a serious problem and trying to invent something new always has risks associated with it, right? You need to think about risks associated with the product, risks associated with, like, you know, hiring the right people, you know, creating the right processes, creating the right culture, right? Bringing together people to do something meaningful, right? And all of these things need to happen at the same time when you have very few resources available to you, right? So you need to think all the time about all these moving parts and then putting together in a way that actually makes sense, right? So you need to add value at any given point in time, but still think about what is the overall impact of what you're creating, but also understanding that you're working with people. You need to keep them happy all the time, right? So all of this together, right? Once you mitigate that, you actually create a great company.
What exactly is the difference between a small business and a startup?
I think that, like, the difference is scale, right? Like, you want a startup just wants to be huge, and a small business is okay staying small. I think, like, if you have ambitions to be, you know, to serve everyone in the whole world, you're probably a startup. That's easy when you do software. So, like, when you're doing an app, like, you don't have any aspiration for it to be small, right? There's no benefit to being small because you can serve everyone. So the question then is, like, if you're doing, like, some kind of, you know, something that, like, depends on, like, location or geography, I think it's a fuzzier question then.
All right, well, I feel enlightened about the world of tech and about San Francisco and about Silicon Valley. And I'd like to thank all of our panelists for joining us today. Farhad, Ron, and Alice, And thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time on The Business of Life.
Business of Life is made possible by Better Money Habits. It's a free resource that helps you build practical knowledge and take control of your finances. Powered by Bank of America. See more at bettermoneyhabits.com.